May I assist you in some way? Ah, well, that's just lovely. You want to talk to me. Should I drop to my knees in thanks? Just because you come over here with a smile and you think I'm gonna melt in my chair? If your aim is to impress, you'll have to do an awful lot better than that, I'm afraid. Moody, Well, I was enjoying my own company, which just so happens to be my favourite kind of company, and I severely doubt you could bring anything to the table that would improve matters. You could try, huh? I suppose you could. Don't rate your chances, though. Relax, it's not a comment on you, it's more of a comment on probability, really. Hence the word chances. You could be the stupidest or smartest person alive for all I know, but in the grand scheme of things, throwing up a random data point and asking it to keep up with me, it is optimistic in my experience. It's not cynical, merely practical. The odds are not in your favour from my point of view. How could they be? I've wasted so much breath on people who want the world's most complex issues to be fixed by a simple soundbite. So on this fine day, in this place, at this time, in regard to the prospect of our meeting being a life-changing event, well, technically a slim possibility, I would simply summate my feelings as I'm not excited. What's wrong with me? Nothing. Well, obviously not nothing. I am fallible, as any other person is, although I like to believe the ability to be self-aware of my own limitations helps somewhat nullify this. Did your eyes just glaze over there? No. Yeah, sure. So why did you come over here? I mean, really, what is the brooding loner archetype just too much? I looked upset. I'm not upset. Perhaps. Resigned? But watching the world burn while nobody seems to notice is rather amusing in a somewhat I have no mouth, but I must scream kind of way. Oh, you've heard of that. How charming. Well, if you are truly willing to listen, then I suppose I'm willing to speak. I do sit and think a lot, so I suppose I may as well think out loud to a potentially intelligent new audience. I guess I'm just impressed that your presumably TikTok-addled brain has managed to communicate and even concentrate this long on someone who's speaking to you without making moronic faces or screaming very loudly about nothing. It must be very hard for you. Condescending. Not so much conning you, but that's a bad joke. Descending, however, we are. The world is very much burning. Literally as well as in our jolly metaphor. After all, The scariest thing to find in Pandora's box is nothing, right? Oh, what do I mean? If you really want to talk, we can talk, but I'm not gonna dumb it down just so you can get it. Well, not much, anyway. If you're sure. Why not? Let's start with this. And I do warn you, if you are of weak will or mind, this might not be what you want to hear about the world necessarily. Believe it or not, I strive to be an optimist despite the views I'm about to display. For if we can acknowledge problems honestly, we can try at least to work on them. That first part, though, is in the modern age. Well, probably in any age, but I live in the modern age. And I'm very well aware that acknowledging problems truthfully, as opposed to spinning them for some sort of political gain, well, that is truly rare now. Might as well start with the silver bullet. Education. Education. I mean, in this country, education. Turning aside the blatantly scandalous universities exploiting foreign students, sending agents out to foreign countries, to India, to China, to lure their students into paying far too much for far too little of a degree. Ignoring that particular scandal, are you sure you're going to be able to keep up with all this? I have a lot to say, and if you were just hoping for a flirty conversation, I'm afraid, nice smile and all, I'm looking for something oh so much more. Try me, huh? Okay, let's try you. Education standards are an appalling low, even versus recent history, and somewhat due to incompetence and systemic idiocy, but far more interestingly, it's also an unintended consequence born of good intentions. I can give you a fun example of unintended consequences. And this is a good little story you can tell your friends if you forget every other part of this. While the British ruled and invaded, suppressed, however you would like to say it, India, it was brought to the attention of the British that parts of the country had terrible issues with cobras, causing a clear and present danger to the citizenry. So, the British, of course, enacted a law. More of a bounty, I suppose, than a law. A monetary reward for the head of every cobra presented to the relevant authorities. Seems like a good idea, yes? Eliminate the cobras by cutting the head off the snake, quite literally. Well, naturally, the Indians began to breed cobras. Upon realizing that they were being tricked en masse, the British decided to end the cobra bounty. And so, with no further use for the cobras, the breeders simply let them loose. And so, having spent a lot of money and effort trying to fix the problem, there is now significantly more cobras than there were to begin with. Unintended consequences. And the world is full of them. A large part of modern political discourse is, of course, devoted to desperately trying to assign ill intent to the most self-evidently unintended results. I suppose the rewriting of history does come with a large amount of editorial bias. Anyways, unintended consequence in education. When my father was young, women couldn't go into what society saw as the top professions, law, medicine, and so on. And while undoubtedly wrong and unfair, it did have the unintentional upside of many brilliant women stuck with very few avenues. With not many other choices, many became teachers. More importantly, they became brilliant teachers. Now, those same brilliant women born of another generation are able to climb up corporate ladders, pursue many different professions, all while teachers are getting hamstrung by idiotic regulations and curriculums unashamedly laden with errors and falsehoods. A particular favourite of mine came from a business management course I took, where I was marked as incorrect for labelling shareholders as stakeholders of a business because it wasn't in the book. Modern education. Well, these brilliant women would no longer look twice at education for the most part, and for that reason, along with many others, we have far fewer great educators, and with that comes far fewer great children. Without proper nurturing, potentially great minds fall to unrest, fall to boredom, fall to depression, fall to a feeling that the world has nothing to give them. Education is the silver bullet, but poor education is a poison that infects the very heart of a civilization. And so we can examine from that point where we are now. Well, am I boring you yet? Would you rather watch a video of the pandas at the zoo? You know, I respect the almost slightly evil grin you just had there. I have found many times in my life that an unexpectedly intelligent conversation can fire up the old neurons, I suppose. Well, you were asking me why I looked unhappy or resigned. It's because I was thinking about how this educational crisis leads to a very natural conclusion. Let's take the situation now. My country is run by an imbecile whose main career highlight was falling off a scooter like a 4-year-old child. The UK as a whole is horribly run and has an appalling trade deficit, which is so ignored that most people don't even know what a trade deficit is. The journalist can barely speak an English sentence, much less actually critically analyse the situation of the country. AI is about to absolutely slash the job market in half, and while it could free up millions of people to help fix the world, we will all be forced into increasingly nonsensical positions that we can label jobs in order to find a way to cling on to a now defunct societal structure passed down from the days where 90% of people were employed by agriculture. Don't worry though, because along with the economic collapse, we are following right on there with a level of public discourse that is barely above drooling on itself and wagging its tail at the sight of food. Anything even remotely approaching nuanced debate has died at the altar of rigid ideologies and an us or them mentality, leading to barely coherent shouting matches between increasingly radical and indefensible viewpoints, before both sides run back to the little echo chambers to be told by equally logic-deprived mouth-breathers that everything they say is right and everything the opposition says is wrong, all while seemingly clinging to the idea that they are always correct and that learning from others, or indeed even your own blatant mistakes, is for idiots who don't already know absolutely everything about everything. And so it's like people find a cult of ideology, and from that moment they can never be wrong again. It is ignorant, lazy, pathetic, and childish. So if you came up to me to ask me to give this place a good TripAdvisor review, you're out of luck. Society is down a hole, the economy is not far behind, and is far worse than anyone cares to publicly admit. The artificial propping up of the housing market, the massive relief of debt, done mainly by the massive printing of money by governments who just so happen to be the biggest debtors in the Western economy, all done under people's noses while they're never told to even think about it because that might cause a problem. And, you know, this is all before we start talking about any of the biggest problems. Yeah, the biggest problem. You know, global warming, famine, poverty, disease, human trafficking, child soldiers, the works. So I sit in places like this, with unquestioning pieces of the machine moving all around me, getting on with their days, only concerned with the next massively unimportant task they have. They fret, they drink, they laugh, they betray, they convince themselves that they are good people. They see the world with eyes that were made for them. Do you understand? They never question the foundations that were laid out for them. They never question the lives they've been told, and they've never really questioned, truly, what it is society asked them to do. I almost fall over laughing sometimes with how people try to challenge societal standards, and they almost always pick the wrong ones for the wrong reasons, but hey. Even worse, they think they know love. They shackle up with the nearest person who will also settle for just enough, and they die, never truly satisfied because they never actually looked once, not even once, away from the shadows on the wall. They never, ever escaped the cave. Do you know Plato's cave? Well, a quick refresher couldn't hurt, I suppose. Without going into the full details, the cave is essentially this idea that your entire life that you perceive, that you understand from a base level is like shadows upon a wall. And if you only ever see the shadows on the wall, you only ever see, in some ways, what you're supposed to see, you never truly understand what's happening. And that's not to say what is happening is so magical or complex that you couldn't understand it. But no one ever tells you to look. No one ever tells you to take a step back and examine what's going on. You're just told to watch the shadows dancing on the wall and to be entertained. It is only upon understanding the light that casts the shadow, understanding the intentions of the shadow, understanding the little film that is being played out for you on the wall, that you come to understand that there is more. And so the great challenge of life is to escape the cave. The great challenge of life is to walk outside and to see the full world, not just the shadows on the wall, but everything. The light, the darkness, the water and trees and grass and sky, to see everything as it is, not as you wish it would be, not idealized to a political or moral standard, not the shadow, the idea, the interpretation, not the simple, not the mere form or suggestion of reality. No. To try to find the real truths. Or at least that is a popular and reasonable, to some extent, interpretation. Well, when I look around, it's very difficult not to see many people looking at shadows. Many people doing as the shadows say, clocking in from 9 to 5, working hard for that final exam, partying where they're meant to party, talking to who they're supposed to talk to, staying in a little bubble that's been designed just for them, seeing with the eyes that have been taught to watch the shadows, going from one relatively meaningless event to another, with the belief that this is what life is, that this is all life can be. How sad. Perhaps some would say this is a very cynical viewpoint, but the more you sit back and watch people fail to realize anything that's happening to them, fail to dissect any arguments being presented to them, fail to look anywhere beyond the most basic first level of everything that happens to them, the more you think, shadows. You have a question for me, huh? Go right ahead. What do I do for a living? Amazing. What do I do for a living? I shine light into a dark place that many refuse to admit is there, to comfort a pain and loneliness that society dares not acknowledge exists, much less tries to understand, for it undermines so many of the stories we try to tell ourselves. In an ever more superficially connected world, we become more isolated than ever before, and so I speak. Through stories, through scenarios, through ideas, through concepts, through structures, I speak. For all the time that they will give me, I share to people all across the world the fundamental knowledge that it's okay to feel lonely. It's okay to feel scared, to feel small or insufficient. The world is both a broken, scary, remorseless hell and a wondrous, boundless garden of kindness. A confusing maelstrom of poor planning, competing interests, and people just trying to get by. A whirlwind too strong for most to even escape, much less acknowledge is moving their actions. I reassure people that they don't have to know everything, that they don't have to be perfect, that as long as they are honestly trying to be good, to be fair, to examine their flaws and reflect upon their mistakes with impartiality, to judge themselves before others, to know that somewhere in the world there are others doing the same. They will feel a greater sense of belonging than they ever have before. Trying to express that their best can be enough so long as they are honest and not lazy or cutting corners, so long as they are thoughtful, not just fearful of thoughts, so long as they're inquisitive and not closed off to things that are alien to them, so long as they truly live and don't merely just survive, so long as they just try to escape from the cave and not be satisfied to just watch the shadows on the wall. So long as they can do that, then they are leading a life worth living, no matter their economic or social or family circumstances, so long as they are really trying their honest best and are not lying to themselves about what that best is. But of course, none of this is the question you really asked. You did not wish to know what I do, not what I try to achieve or spend my effort trying to put into the world. You were looking for a quick job title and perhaps an annual salary. You wanted the soundbite, not the full story. Or am I wrong? Huh. Maybe you really are the one. The one interesting person I've met recently. Listen, I've talked a lot. And I would be in many ways a hypocrite were I not to listen in return. So tell me, why did you sit down here? The full and honest truth, no matter how you feel it presents you. No more, no less. Why did you really sit down next to me today? Take your time to answer. I'm all ears. And I'm very willing to respond to any comment you might want to give. No, please keep talking. I find myself surprisingly interested. Surprisingly, well, yeah, because I told you when you sat down, I thought you were going to be a shadow watcher, if you catch my drift. The fact that you're still here, while many may have left, the fact that you're still here, it really is impressive. It shows a lot. It shows more than a surface level interest in the world, or, well, as you admit, it was a romantic interest, is why you initially sat down. It also shows more than a surface level interest in me. And I will fully admit to not having expected that at all. Why would I? No, I'm being serious. Why would I? It's not very often someone like you shows up in the world, in, I suppose, the real world. I find the odd soul online who wants to explore the world further, really. But it's very rare that one walks in front of me and just sits down. Improbable. Almost impossible, really. The kind of stuff in fanciful stories, I suppose. But kudos to you. You took the chance. I list amongst my flaws that I'm not sure I would have had the, I suppose, optimism to do the same. If I'd seen you sitting, minding your own business, I'd have simply thought you not interested in my wider array of thoughts. Of course, I just jumped over a whole bunch of things that could themselves be many hours long in terms of conversational back and forth. Or in other words, a conversation. I'm growing strangely nervous in the interest of honesty. Maybe you really are. Well, I suppose I did say, to be honest. Maybe you really are the one. Honestly and truthfully, maybe. I can't remember the last time someone both understood what I was saying and smiled at me the way you smile at me. I'll admit I'm a little charmed right now. I'm sure it will pass, of course. That I'll either wake up or that there's something not quite true about this, but hey, even if that is the case, even if this is all just a make-believe, perhaps someday this really happens. It does for some people, right? Maybe not all. Maybe the lesson is truly, well, twofold. The first being yours, taking a chance, taking a risk. Risking rejection, risking embarrassment to pursue something you hope is there, with no evidence that it's there. Maybe the idea being that you only need to be right once. You only need to find the right person once. And maybe the lesson is in myself. In just truly expressing myself and being confident that the right person will find it interesting. They won't just be bored or think I'm too much or, I don't know, whatever else. That maybe out there are people who really want to engage on a deeper level, to live outside the cave that they've been told to grow up in. Yes, I'll continue to torture that analogy endlessly, thanks for asking. I actually need to go, but I can't believe this is happening. I want to... Well, actually, you know what? I was going to try the old classic of I'll try to get your number because, you know, that, in theory in the dating world, oh, that puts you in the position of power. Shadows. I do hope that you call. I dare to hope that you call. Maybe we can see each other again and see if this is really what I really can't believe it. I'm admitting that I hope it is. And I also can't believe I'm stuttering over my words here. Perhaps just as well that I need to leave. I suppose I might hear from you at a later date, and I can let you do more of the talking, I guess. Or not, if you simply like listening to my voice. In any case, I guess it's bye for now.